Why is it important to find peaceful solutions to problems started by war? Because I think ultimately finding peaceful solutions is the only solution. I'm David Potorti. I'm the co-founder of September 11th Families for Peaceful Tomorrows and the co-editor of a new book of poetry called Crossing the Rift, North Carolina Poets on 9/11 and Its Aftermath. On September 11th, my brother Jim, he was my older of two brothers that I have, died at the World Trade Center on September 11th. He worked in the North Tower, and the plane that hit the North Tower pretty much went right into his office. So he was killed that day. My mom had called me and told me what was going on, and we watched it on TV like everybody else. We watched the replays of the planes hitting the building, and we watched the buildings fall down. And we didn't really know for a couple of days that my brother was gone. And it was pretty clear on Friday that if he was in his office, there was no way that he survived. And so that's when I told my parents that this is what happened. And I do have a very vivid memory of my mom and dad hugging each other, and my mom just saying my brother's name and saying, "I don't want anybody else to have to feel the pain that I'm feeling right now." My father is a 4th Division Marine in World War II. My father lost 75% of his company in combat. He was in the South Pacific. And his response was not anger. His response was very circumspect and very measured, because I think he had a really good idea of what war actually is, if we were going to go to war over this, because he had seen, most of the people that he served with were killed quite dramatically and tragically. I remember that, and I sort of took that as guidance. I remember CNN is on, and they've got all these graphics about America's new war. And it was kind of amazing how quickly we had sort of pivoted from this feeling of sympathy and collegiality with other people who had suffered into this militaristic response. And I was kind of taken by that, because I think the response really from just about all over the world when this happened was a response of compassion and empathy. I think it's important to let people know that they have choices about how they feel, that when a country decides it's going to go to war, that there can still be some dissent and some discussion about how that happens or what the goals are.
Every nation in every region now has a decision to make. Either you are with us or you are with the terrorists.
So I think it's important for people to have that sort of realization that it's not you're with us or you're with the terrorists. It's not black and white like that. There's always room for people to talk to each other. And I remember also at the time thinking, okay, this is, September, we're gonna be into Thanksgiving, and we're gonna be, saying all the wonderful platitudes that we say around those times at the same time that we are bombing Afghanistan. Maybe that's necessary. Maybe we need to get the guys that did this so that, it doesn't happen again, but ultimately we're gonna be killing a lot of other innocent people. I'm a writer, so I started writing, opinion pieces in newspapers about, we've got to pay attention to the outcomes of war and what our response to this is. And then there were other people who had lost family members as well, who also wrote their own opinion pieces. And there was a group that sort of brought all those together. It was a woman named Kathy Kelly, who's a peace activist, and she collected all of those voices because she had read them in the paper. And so that's how I met the family members who ultimately we created September 11th Families for Peaceful Tomorrows. I think with a group like Peaceful Tomorrows, I'm advocating for my people, and by that I mean civilians. And what we've learned is that most of the deaths in war in the 20th century were civilian deaths. So I think it's important to have solidarity with those people, whoever they are, around the world.
Family members of the victims of 9/11 are making a statement about terrorism etched in stone. They will drag a 1,400-pound monument from Boston to New York City, the granite.
And so we wanted to just kind of explore those possibilities and just say the answer is not always dropping bombs. There has to be something besides that. We also wanted to keep an eye on threats to civil liberties that occur when you go to war. We suspected and came to learn that there would be lots of effects on civil liberties, human rights issues, surveillance, Islamophobia, racial profiling. We wanted to keep an eye on all of those things as an outcome of the war. We also wanted transparency from our government. We wanted to understand what happened on 9/11, why it happened, who was involved. One of the things I learned in working with my group and what people taught me is that there's no hierarchy of suffering, that my suffering is not better than your suffering, that your family members who died are not more important than my family members who died. And we've commemorated the bombing of Hiroshima. We killed 140,000 people when we bombed Hiroshima. We killed 70,000 people when we bombed Nagasaki. You know, those people were just like me. Those were civilian casualties. People stay in anger because they don't want to deal with grief. So I think we have to be able to deal with grief. I think Americans uniquely do not know how to deal with grief. I think the answer to everything is love. You know, is love and human solidarity, that I don't have to agree with you, I don't have to like you, but I do have to love you, sort of the way that Martin Luther King Jr. talked about. I have to love you. I have to recognize that you and I have a shared destiny in this world. And I realize that my kids are never going to be safe unless your kids 8,000 miles away are safe, that we're connected. And so, you know, maybe we can't stop terrorism and war, but we can do what we can, starting with ourselves, to take care of each other. And I think that spreads out, and that we wind up taking care of the whole world.